Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for another one of our MAG free educational seminars. Today, we have the very lovely Mr. Brad Williams, occupational therapist based in South Australia. Brad's been working with the MAG panel for a little while, and we're hoping to get him a lot more bookings. It's really interesting, the work he does, and his presentation, I've had a look at it. It is quite insightful to those of us who perhaps don't know all that much about what an OT really does. The role of the OT is becoming critical in the medico-legal world, with more and more of our clients on both sides of the fence wanting an OT assessment for their injured persons who are the subject of their claims or legal matters. This is a really important area of getting people well and getting people to live their best lives, to use that horrible phrase. So Brad's business focuses predominantly on driving assessments, vehicle modifications, and things to do with mobility. So that even touches on wheelchairs and the equipment that's associated with getting people out and about and being mobile. But of course, OTs work across a whole range of other areas as well. So I would ask if you would please stay on mute during the presentation so that noise from your home or workplace doesn't interrupt the quality of the recording. There will be an opportunity at the end of the session for you to ask questions of Brad, but if you have to go before the session's over, please type your question in the chat function and I'll make sure that it gets answered. We typically will send you out the recording and the slides within the day. Sometimes it might be a bit more than a day, but pretty soon. And as you know, our seminars get saved to our YouTube channel as well, so you can watch them at your leisure whenever you like. We also you can access our seminars through your MAG login on the left-hand side menu bar. So without further ado, I thank you all for making the time to join us today, and I hand you over to Brad Williams. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you, Michelle, for the very warm welcome, and hi everyone that has joined us. Thank you very much for joining us, and I really appreciate having a bit of an audience. That's very nice and not just talking to no one. So please make sure you type in any questions that you've got for me as an OT, and I'll do my absolute best to answer them at the appropriate time as we're going.
Actually,
Okay.
Brad, I'll just catch you there too. We actually had quite a lot of people register to attend today, but in my experience, when it's school holidays, a lot of people register, but they don't attend in the knowledge that they're going to get the recording sent to them to watch in their own time. So this actually was a very popular subject, and a few people will probably join us as we start as well.
Not a problem at all, and I'm happy to answer questions beyond the time frame of this presentation as well, and I'm sure Michelle will send them through. So as it was suggested, I am a driver-trained occupational therapist, but I'm in a unique position as well. I'm also a driving instructor, and that's the same with our team as well. So we come from not just an assessment frame of mind, but also a doing frame of mind as well, where we actually get in the car and help people with their disabilities get mobile. So a bit of a unique position that I come from, and I'm happy to talk about that as well at the end if people want to know more about that. Today, I'm hoping to take you on a journey to show you how powerful OT assessments can be, not just for the individual, but for the family. And not just that, the insurers and the whole legal and rehabilitation framework. So fingers crossed you get something out of that. Now, what if your client could regain independence more efficiently? And what if you could save money and reduce support needs for that individual? What if navigating functional assessments didn't feel like stumbling around in the dark? Hopefully, this presentation will shine a light on those questions. We're going to talk about why and when to refer to an OT, and what our assessments actually look like in that real world scenario, and how they can really transform people's lives and outcomes for the people involved as well. So in case you don't know what an occupational therapist is, and it wasn't that long ago that I was having to explain what an OT was to everybody, but thanks to the NDIS especially, the OT has really become its own. It's really grown in knowledge, and there's been a massive uptake in occupational therapy at universities as well. And there's a real shortage of OTs out there thanks to things like the NDIS. But an occupational therapist, or if I call it an OT, sorry about the jargon, but an OT is a health professional who doesn't just look at symptoms and diagnoses. We do play a part in that bit there, but we really look at what people can do in their everyday life, whether it's showering or working, or in my case, driving. We're there to help people live better, more independent lives. So what does that look like in the medico-legal case area and NDIS case area? Well, we provide objective, evidence-based assessments. Our reports are widely accepted in the legal and insurance settings. We advocate for functional and quality of life needs. And we help the legal professionals understand the complex medical issues and specifically that impact on function. So in the medico-legal space, we don't just support people, we support the evidence. What does it actually mean in real life? We provide reports that are objective, functional, and credible across the NDIS, insurance, and legal settings. And this is where we really come into our own. OTs link the medical diagnosis to what it means to somebody's everyday life, their day-to-day life and their function. I mean, I might be biased, but that's a pretty powerful thing, especially in complex insurance cases, court decisions, where somebody's future can really hinge on what's written in somebody's report. So we don't take it lightly. A little bit about us. We do driver assessments, driver rehab, installation of vehicle mods, which is a little bit unique as well, where we actually install them under the Williams OT banner. We focus on other areas of mobility, such as wheelchair prescriptions and assessments, and seating and postural assessments and home modifications. I'm not going into this in great detail because it's more about the process that we're going to concentrate on. We have occupational therapists with postgrad training in driver assessments and rehab, so a little bit different to your generalist OT. We really focus in on this area of driving. We've also got OTs that are trained as driving instructors, so we can really get into the car and get people mobile in that driving setting. It's a big focus of our business model. The exciting thing is that we've been doing this since 2011, and we've been doing medico-legal cases and insurance work for all of that time. We're just new to the MAG group. Just so you know, if you're looking to refer to us, we don't do functional capacity assessments. That is something that there's plenty of OTs out there doing that. We really focus in on the functional aspect of the task, not a holistic approach. But there is plenty of people out there that do this, and this presentation is for them as well. It's not just about Williams OT. Workplace vocational assessment, again, we won't do that bit either. We will, again, the presentation is good for them as well, because we're talking about OT in general. What we do is those driver assessments, and that's our real passion. And our passion is about getting people mobile, assessing their mobility and looking for ways that we can enhance their mobility to get them out in the community. And our reports are highly utilised in those medico-legal cases and NDIS world. Our job is to really bring the reality to the paperwork. You want to know more about driver assessments and what they look like? Tom Cleary, I think it is, did a fantastic talk back in 2023 as part of this MAG presentation YouTube channel. So I'm going to do a shout out to him. I don't know Tom at all, but I watched his presentation and he highlights and summarises it really well. So I really encourage you to go back and look at that presentation. I provided the link there in green on this slide. So if you want to know more about driver assessments. I'm going to touch on it through here because that's what we do. But if you want to go and have a look at his presentation to get more detail about that, I'll cross-refer to Tom. All right. So why are OT assessments so very important? We get into the why. Well, OTs are different from doctors and physios and psychologists. While those professionals diagnose and recommend based on observations, we put it to the test. We take something like a pain scale or a memory scale, and we check what that looks like in action. And we look at things like, can they sit in the car? Can they manage the pedals? And we do that in a real life scenario. Can they cognitively negotiate a roundabout? Can they negotiate a complex turn? Oh, sorry, I haven't clicked forward, so I apologize. We look at it in a real life scenario. So not just doing the assessments itself on a paper-based assessment and then making an assumption, we actually then put it to the test, whether it's driving or other areas of OT as well. We look at all of those. So let's say it's the mini mental or the pain rating scale, and then we look at that in a functional way, in a safe and meaningful way as well. So we do it in driving instructor cars and so forth, but we really put it to the test. I chose this picture here because we were looking at her ability to, one, get into the car, but then also load the wheelchair across her body in a large four-wheel drive, which was her passion area. So we look at what potential damage is that going to have on her shoulders. So it's not just can she do it, what is the functional implications of that long term? So when you're doing your case, we're going to be looking at what the long-term prognosis is for that as well. So it's very practical based. These assessments give an accurate picture of what someone can realistically do. They provide evidence that holds up in court because we've put it to the test. They guide funding decisions, and most of all, they help people live better lives with less support. So compared to the office-based assessment, we're actually doing it in their area. So if it's a driving assessment, we're looking at it in a functional way, usually in a driving instructor's car, but then looking at what that rolls over into their car and their environment around their local setting. It's an accurate representation of function. It's objective and evidence-based, and it supports claims and compensation and rehabilitation. And it's also risk management for the insurers and the employers for the long term. So overall, it has a very big impact on reducing long-term costs if we can assess it in an objective way right at the start. As an example, someone may not need taxis that have been funded because based on an assessment in a doctor suite. No disrespect to doctors, I don't want to be labelled with that at all. But we take that to the test and put that to the test, and people can quite often drive further than what they're reporting in a doctor suite because of their anxiety, the PTSD, whatever it might be. They're very reserved and risk averse. And when we put that to the test, they actually drive a lot further quite often than what they think that they can. Okay. Let's talk about the risk of not having an assessment with an OT. So what happens if there's no OT involved? So there's a risk of inadequate support and financial hardship. So if you think about if you get injured and someone prescribes a taxi to get to and from work, is there taxis to be able to get to Bunnings for a set of nails to be able to fix something at home? Is there taxis to be able to, I've run out of bread, I've run out of milk, how am I going to get the bread and the milk? Now, if it's me, I'm just going to grab the keys, jump in the car, and away I go down to the shop because I need it for the kids' breakfast before they go to school. I've been there, run out of milk right at the start of the day, and the kids are really, really grumpy. I'm not going to be waiting for a taxi to go and do that. My wife may have already gone to work. As an example, if you're an injured person, it's up to you then to take care of the home duties. One of those is going to get bread and milk as an example. So that hardship, financial hardship, but also support hardship is something that is very significant. That lack of independence and possibly secondary mental health issues is something that really should be understood and considered of why we should be looking to enhance function wherever we possibly can. For the insurers and the employers, there's a risk of fraudulent claims. So people saying that they can't do something, but really they can. There's legal disputes associated with that as well. But there's also that risk of overpaying as well. So increased misjudgments and unfair rulings is something to consider. But sometimes we're paying for a lot more when we don't really need to either. So that misdiagnosis or over support or under support, even unnecessary mental health impacts, the fraudulent or inefficient claims and the unfair outcomes are all things that we need to really consider. And that's why more and more tribunals and insurance agencies are requesting that functional OT report, and why OT has grown quite significantly over the last couple of years. So how to choose the right OT? If you're referring a client, this is really what you need to look for. First of all, they must be APRA registered. They really do need to be APRA registered. We don't want any rogue traders out there. So most people should be referring for that anyway, and making sure that somebody is an approved registered OT. But they really should have an advanced skill in the area that you're looking for. Okay, so we're a driving OT, but there's housing OTs, wheelchair OTs, there's home modifications OTs, there's pediatric OTs, there's mental health OTs. You really need to be looking for the ideal OT that has a real focus area on what you're looking for. Okay, so I'll be a driving OT, but I'll be looking at the mental health side of that, but I won't be doing a mental health assessment associated with that. That's a lot more in-depth about mental health management throughout the day. I'll be looking to enhance mental health by helping them regain independence through driving. I hope that makes sense. You really need to focus in on the area that you're looking for, and looking for the OT that has that. APRA doesn't allow us to say that we're specialists, but with that, they've got a real focus area on the thing that you're looking to have assessed. So in our case, driving. Do they see the client in the car? Do they see them in their home? How do you know you've got someone who sees the full picture is what you should be asking yourself. All right, so I've got a couple of case studies to help understand this a little bit more and why an OT assessment can make a massive difference. So we've got, these are cases that I've had. I've taken all representation of who they might be out of this presentation, so it's a little bit bland, but we've got a male in his 30s. And if we think about that, someone in their 30s, most people are going to drive well beyond into their 60s. And if it was like my grandmother, who just recently passed away at 96, she drove up until she was 90. So she had 60 years left of driving, but at least 30 years of working life as well. So there's a lot to contemplate in regards to what the future holds for this person. They had back pain from a fall and a compression injury in their spine. They had secondary sciatic pain in both legs as a result of this. Now, the work doctor a work cover doctor reported that they could only drive for 5 minutes based on the clinical-based assessment due to the pain and due to the reported symptoms in the office-based assessment. So work cover were paying for taxis for him to get to work, and it's a 1 hour trip to work. So it's a 2 hour trip in a taxi every day through peak hour. There's a real lack of independence around that trip to and from work. Okay, so we're looking at their holistic life. We're looking at, like I said before, how do we get the milk and the bread, or is that solely the job of the partner of this person? Well, if we look at a driving assessment, we might be able to do both the work and the life in general. So we did a pain rating scale. So resting, it was 5 to 10, but could do most functional tasks really slowly. But they had real peaks in their pain when doing anything that they exerted. They're self-reporting that they could only drive 5 minutes, and of course that's not going to get someone to work when they live over an hour away. There was also a real fear factor, a secondary fear factor of going too far and increasing their pain, and the stress levels associated with that, really trying to avoid pain, trying to stay at 5 out of 10 pain scale rating and not going into the 7s and 8s. That was a real issue for them. There was also a reduced range of motion in the back. So we're talking rotation of the spine, but also a lot of tension through their back as well. So it was impacting on their shoulder and neck. So looking over their shoulder was an issue as well. Now, this doesn't come out in the the assessment in the doctor's room, but it did in the OT assessment. We've noted what kind of car they have. It was an old four-wheel drive with a very bad seat in it. All the cushion had gone. There's springs coming through the actual cushion. That's how old the four-wheel drive was. A high four-wheel drive. So the sitting on the edge of the cushion, rotating on the edge of the cushion, it was all worn down on the right-hand side. And the seat was actually on an angle from left to right from many years of rotating into the car, sliding in and out of the car because it had jacked up suspension. Now that suspension was also very, very stiff and very rugged off-road tires. The pedals, the brake and the clutch were very, very stiff, like driving a truck. And the person was having to climb up and down into the four-wheel drive, rotating off of that deteriorating cushion and landing on the ground with impact. When they're sitting in the car, they had an extremely poor ergonomic position. They were a long way back from the pedal. Steering wheel was a long way away from them. They were reaching with their right hand on the steering wheel, twisting because everything was so far away from them, a real laid back seat as well. So just straight away that observation of their environment, which OTs are really well known for, is that they assess the person, the environment, and the actual occupation that they're doing, the task that they're doing. The environment itself was really, really poor. So the OT assessment, to give you a case study scenario, we looked at his ability to drive an automatic sedan, the driving instructor's car. We also looked at adding an extra memory foam cushion. So if you think about all the beds that are on the market, you've got your spring base, and then they're putting a lovely memory foam on top, and everyone is meant to be sleeping better nowadays. If we do that, well, we can do the same in a car. We can put a memory foam on top of the firm cushioning to take out the vibrations of the road, but also give more comfort and less bouncing up and down on the road because it's more cushioned for the back, but also your ischial tuberosities, your little bony bits of your bottom, sit into the cushion rather than on the cushion and bounce up and down. So we get a lot more comfort, a lot less bouncing, and a lot better support for all of those vibrations going back up through the back. We adjusted his seating position, brought him more upright, brought the steering wheel towards him, and provided a lumbar cushion as well, so he wasn't sitting in a slouch position to better support the back. He was so stiff through his neck, he wasn't checking his blind spots, and every time he did, he was like really stiff, trying to look over his shoulder. So we increased his safety by adding blind spot mirrors. We also put his right foot on the floor, which is something that you might not think about. But if you're at Oktoberfest and you're holding a beer stein out in front of you, you might only be able to do that for a minute or so. But if we support some part of the arm, you might be able to do that for a lot longer. Well, it's the same with your heel on the ground. He was driving with his leg up in the air because he was sitting so far back. So he was loading his back through using his foot in the air on the accelerator and brake especially, but also the clutch. Wasn't using any support. So he sat in closer, a lot closer, bending his knee, putting his heel on the ground, and being able to take the load off of that leg, and then also reducing that pain up through his back as well. Just from that, he was able to drive for an hour without any fluctuations in his pain, which is significant, really, really significant. Now, our assessments only go for an hour, but this really aligned with his ability to get to and from work. But he had this other car, which didn't meet those guidelines. The steering wheel didn't come in and out. It was old, had the poor seat. So we had to make recommendations based on that. So we recommended the partner's car to start off with, which was similar to the assessment vehicle. We looked at the long-term replacement of his vehicle to be an automatic with smoother tires and a low ride height. Mentally, he wished to do more off-road driving. However, he was starting to realize with this long-term injury that this is probably something that is going to be something that he can't do, going down into big ravines and off-roading and bouncing and all those other things. He was starting to realize that he may need to let go of that part of his life. And we had to assist him to work through those mental health adjustments associated with that. And I believe he started seeing a psychologist in regards to that. The overall cost to the insurers, no further taxis, which was really, really significant. The investment in the cushion on the seat and the one behind his back, they tend to need to get replaced, a bit like your mattress is meant to get replaced every 3 to 5 years. So we're talking $1,000 compared to taxi costs going backwards and forwards all the time. And recommendation to replace the vehicle was left to the insurance company and the client to work through. And I actually don't know what the outcome was of that, but we recommended that car needed to be, that his actual car wasn't safe for him, and they were working through the replacement of that car and the market value of his current car, which unfortunately for him was really low, but that's up to the insurance company to figure that out. But the overall cost was this person actually could drive more than 5 minutes if he had the right car and the right cushion and the blind spot mirrors to go with it as well. So a real significant outcome for him. The other case study that I want to share with you is one about anxiety. These are two areas that come up a lot. Pain, which is really hard to measure in a functional sense, and then anxiety as well, really hard to measure that in a clinic-based assessment. So I've picked those two to talk about. Now, this was a motor vehicle accident where the lady was T-boned on the driver's door with a car that was failing to give way. The car just pulled out from the side street and hit them. They were looking to the right and drove straight into her car. She physically rehabbed. She didn't have any more physical injuries to rehab. She was a little bit stiff and sore, but she'd recovered from those because it was 5 years since the accident. But she had not driven other than around her own farm in 5 years. Anywhere that she had to go, she had to sit in the back seat with her eyes shut, hand down in her head down in her hand, not looking, and based on inertia, she was screaming at the driver if they were going too fast. So that feeling of going too fast. She had an absolute fear of being in a car. She was working with a psychologist to look at returning to drive, and that's when we got the referral, because the psychologist was believing that she was ready to take this on. So we were able to be the practical element for the psychologist, which is something that we are very happy to do at Williams OT. She lived on the farm, rural property. No taxi costs for that, but lots of taxi costs backwards and forwards to the city for those appointments, those ongoing medical appointments for the psychologist and so forth. We ended up having to go to her. Highly intelligent person. Highly intelligent person running this complex farm with lots of employees and so forth. Full awareness of the road rules, but significant PTSD, as we've obviously explained. She arrived for the assessment as a passenger. They were driving on the Northern Expressway, which is a 110-kilometre road. The person that drove her there said that they averaged a speed of 40 to 70 kilometres an hour on the highway because of her anxiety. We were unable to complete an on-road assessment due to the significant panic attacks associated with it. So we're talking really restricted function in life at this early stage. So what we did was we actually did a home-based driver assessment, and we ended up driving on the farm first, and she had good car control. She really did. She was able to turn the steering wheel. She was able to do the pedals. It was nothing to do with the physical function at all. But as soon as she got to her gate, we weren't able to do any further. Okay. We had multiple calls with the psychologist, and we did lots of training on her farm about getting ready to go out onto the main road. But we went to roads, first of all, where there was no traffic, which was actually able to do around her farm area. But we did multiple sessions from her area. We discussed the road rules. We discussed how people can make mistakes and face that fear that someone is potentially going to make a mistake at some time, again, in her driving future. But we looked at ways that we can be more proactive rather than reactive on the road. And we looked at ways to be able to observe further ahead and be able to not brake at the last minute, but brake for things that look out of the norm. We drove around our local street first as a passenger and preparing her to drive. I was driving a lot and getting her used to being a passenger around the area, and we looked at the road environment and where to look and what am I looking at and how far ahead I was looking for things that potentially look out of place. And we were doing a lot of prep for cars coming in from her right-hand side. We did 20 sessions, and which is a significant cost to the insurance, especially when we had to drive to her farm, do the sessions in her local area. But we were able to we were trying to get her to get to her local shop and get her farming requirements. So there was a farm depot that she could go and get equipment from to help her with her farming requirements. In the end, we did multiple sessions from 5 minutes through to an hour and a half worth of driving out on her local roads with that slow progression. Lots of talking through the mental health sides of it all and working with the psychologist to get her to be able to enhance her own environment and challenge her beliefs and work through the PTSD. She was able to ride as a passenger, although she couldn't drive at 100 k's an hour when we finished, but I believe that she is now driving confidently around her local area. And if the link works, it's going to ask me to log in, but I'm not sure if you can hear that or not. but it's actually her driving my car without me in the car, which was a magnificent and significant milestone for her, driving out on the road. Don't worry, we did all the risk assessment first. We did everything related to that first, but that was the first time that she was driving by herself in her own environment. So really, really significant milestone for her. And then from that point on, once she'd done that, we'd crossed the barrier and we were able to work through the rest of her PTSD to be able to drive to our local shops and get out and going. Anything is potentially possible. I want to share this video with you. Again, we probably won't have sound. We might have sound. But this is somebody that's had a really significant spinal cord injury, and all 4 limbs are impacted. It's a C4/C5 injury. He's had surgery to be able to get some tendon, some tricep tendon control back into what he's doing. And he's driving a very high level modified car. What we're doing with this video while I'm showing it to you is that if we look at someone's function about what they can do rather than what they can't do, then we're looking for positive outcomes, and we're looking on how we can build on that and we can restore function and life. I really want to thank you for giving me the time to talk about OT today. Like I said, I'm happy to answer any questions. If you'd like to discuss cases or referrals or however this works, I'm happy to connect with you. And remember, the next time somebody says that they can't, I want you to ask, have they seen an OT? And I'll leave it there, but you can keep watching the video.
That was great, Brad. Thank you so much. I think I really like the clear and sensible way you explained those processes. And I think that's going to be very educational and insightful for people in understanding better the breadth of the role of an OT and the importance. And I particularly liked when you said we, meaning OTs, which I'm not, but you said we interpret the diagnosis and use the evidence to find the pathway for the person. I just really liked that as a connecting piece. And I think that's something that people need to realise. An orthopaedic surgeon, for example, can indeed say that we have done an anterior cruciate ligament surgery and we've achieved excellent results from the surgery and the scar's healing nicely and the person's been to physio. But that doesn't answer the ongoing situation for the person in terms of care, supports, or modifications. And that's really what you guys do, bringing it full circle so that the person can actually get the financial compensation and support to provide those things that they're going to need. Yes, I really like that. Now, I had 2 questions from people who were unable to attend today, but you actually answered them both in the presentation. So I'm kind of at a loss for questions. Does anyone else who was listening here have a question for Brad? You can unmute yourself and fire away. No questions. I love it. When that happens, it's because you've answered everything in your presentation.
This is the most anxiety bit is when somebody's got a question that you're not prepared for. So if there's no questions, that's awesome. That's great.
Magic presentation. Brad, I thank you for the time you put into preparing this seminar for us and for your time today. And I thank everyone else for giving us your ears. Look forward to seeing you at our future seminars. And I hope that this has given you thought and that you will look to booking Brad through the MAG group. And we'll see you all again next time. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you.